Hi, everybody. It's Carol Maloney-Scott with Career Happiness Map Coaching and doing some more interviews with subject matter experts. And today I have Susan Beck, and I'm just going to read Susan's little bio. Hi, Susan. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Great. Okay, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about Susan. So Susan has her undergraduate degree in political science from TCU. What does that stand for?
That's Texas Christian University.
Texas Christian University.
In Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that one. And her master's degree in political management from the George Washington University. She spent 7 years in Washington, D.C. in a variety of political, nonprofit fundraising and event management roles before moving to Richmond, Virginia, and transitioning into corporate HR. Susan has been in corporate talent acquisition for 10 years, serving as a recruiter, talent branding specialist, scrum master, and HR process manager. She's passionate about helping others navigate their career journey, as well as empowering young women and girls to take over the world. She has 2 daughters who remind her every day of the unlimited potential of the coming generations of young women. So yeah, I saw when I connected with Susan, I connect with people, and then, I do stalk their stuff, because I just want to kind of see, what's this person about, right? I'm sure you did the same thing with my stuff. So I looked at Susan's Facebook profile and I saw, can I tell about your little daughters and their t-shirts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So Susan and her daughters were both wearing t-shirts that said feminist on it, but it's so cute because they're really little and they just look so cute, like I'm a feminist, like it just looks so cute. And I thought that's awesome that that you're teaching them about their place in the world and the opportunities available to them in the world at such a young age. How old are the girls?
The oldest will be 7 soon, and the little one is 4.5. And that was actually the photo shoot was my birthday present to myself.
Oh, really? That's nice. Yeah, that was a really cute. It's just so cute. Yeah, they look. I knew they were pretty young, but awesome. Okay, so before we get into the questions I kind of had prepared to ask you, Susan, can you just tell us a little bit about what your current role is? Because I think we talked, obviously you're in talent acquisition. I was in talent acquisition for 20 years and I did a bunch of different things too. So like, what are you currently doing? And you don't need to tell us who you're working for if that's not something you want to share in the video, but just, what are you currently doing right now?
So currently I am just traditional full life cycle corporate recruiter. And I have a lot of different business units that I work with, a lot of different managers spread out across the United States. It's a very diverse kind of group of roles that I am recruiting for, but it's very kind of like a standard corporate recruiting right now. Okay,
cool. Well, that is very helpful to my audience. So I don't know if we call that standard in this world, because you're the people on the front lines. So you deal with a lot of screening candidates and talking with candidates and getting candidates set up for interviews with hiring managers. And so you really are on the front line of this process. Okay.
Absolutely.
So as I think I shared with you, Susan, so I was a recruiter for 20 years before and various other roles in TA, but I was a recruiter for a long time, and I left my job to pursue the career coaching business full time. But, I know all recruiters have horror stories about things that people do, things that candidates do, sometimes things that hiring managers do too, but we really about this. But so we want to keep this positive, but yet at the same time, I'd like you to share about some of the times, just as examples really of times when candidates were ill prepared, and if you want to be funny and tell us something that somebody did that was absolutely crazy and insane, totally fine. That fits with my brand. But if you just want to share some things that maybe some candidates had done where they just weren't prepared, either when you called them or for the process, or when they came in for the interview, or even after you debriefed with the hiring manager about what happened in the interview. Any pitfalls, things that people did basically to dissuade you or your hiring managers from moving this person forward in the process.
So definitely, obviously, most people looking for jobs know edit your resume, put a lot of different sets of eyes on your resume, make sure the spelling and the grammar is all correct. One guy I had, poor guy, he uploaded his resume, and I'm, reviewing his resume for a role, and he had sent it to a colleague to edit, but he had never then looked at the edited version and thought his colleague just made some updates, and he just uploaded what his colleague had done. Well, his colleague had taken a pen to it, written up many funny, I'm sure, very inappropriate things on it, very inappropriate things on it.
Oh no.
And that's the version, and that's the version he uploaded. And so I reached out to him and I was like, I think you uploaded the wrong version. I usually try, for something like that, I try and give people the benefit of the doubt that he did not mean that version to be uploaded.
Right.
But I was like, and when he reviewed it, he was horrified and apologized profusely, because he's like, I just thought he like fixed some grammar maybe or something. So I just uploaded what he gave me back and I never even looked at it. So I was always double check that. Obviously we've seen a lot of spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, depending on where you're going, those can be overlooked if you're a strong candidate, but I still, I always hate passing those resumes along because it does show a lack of attention to detail. Mm-hmm. I would say other than that, some other stuff is, we had a candidate interview, and according to the manager, he talked poorly about his previous company and how they didn't know what they were doing. And he was the smartest one there, and no one was as good as him, and he just needed to get out of there and all this stuff. And they're like, we can absolutely see him coming in here and being like, I know more than all of you. Yeah. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to, treat you as a colleague appropriately with respect. And so we did not move forward with him. And then, we have also had people, and one of my clients, my internal clients, businesses that I work with, the vice president had said to me, if you're talking to a candidate and he is rude to you or she is rude to you, let us know, because we've also directed our administrative assistants and our security guards to tell us if someone is being rude or mean. Because when you walk into that building, if you're mean to those people, that just shows a lack of respect for the company and people in general. And that stuff trickles up to leadership. It trickles up to the vice president asked that. And, one of my colleagues was scheduling this candidate for interview, and she came to me and said, hey, I just want to let you know, my experience and kind of how he treated us. He treated us quite poorly and spoke down to us and blamed us for stuff that was not our fault. And we were just trying to help him get to an interview on time. And I took that information and I took it to the hiring manager, and they were like, we actually saw some of that behavior in the interview. Thank you for flagging it to us. It builds our case that he would not fit with our culture. He would not do well with our collaborative teamwork environment, because if he's not treating the people who are paying for his flights pretty much, then he's not gonna treat other people as well. So those are kind of the big ones. Okay. Little things for interviews. I think most companies will always ask, why do you want to work here? And that one I think is a real big one. You can get a lot of information these days off of LinkedIn or Glassdoor on companies. Right. And so when you go into that interview and they're like, why us? Like yes, maybe you want to be a recruiter, but why here? What specifically made you apply to this role? And as someone who's looked for jobs before in the past, hey, sometimes I'm just looking for the recruiter role. Right. But you can do a lot of research and say, hey, well, I see that one of your values is innovation. That is one of my values, is always innovating and always improving. And I think I could bring that to your company and your team. So, identifying some of those things so that you can really speak to the company is very, very helpful in an interview.
Yeah, I think, so you brought up some really, really good points. So I think that what the problem with the bullying, the security people and the admins and just being a general jerk, it almost feels like, why would you need to say that? But, I think that, you need to think about the fact that as soon as you, and I call it that you're on as soon as you're looking for a job, and every interaction you have with any human being having to do with looking for a job, with being on the interview, with whatever, is you're on, you're on camera. People are paying attention to what you're doing. People are noting what you're doing, and all of your behavior matters. All of your behavior matters. So that's a really good point. And I can't stress that one enough. And then the why do you want to work here? Because if you don't have an answer to that in 2020, with the amazing amount of information that we have available at our fingertips, so easy to look stuff up and to get information, even to look up. I had a client recently who was getting flown in for an interview, and she looked up the names of the people that were on the interview sheet that she was going to be interviewing with at the company on LinkedIn, so she could learn a little bit about them. And one of the guys had written some articles, that were public, and, she read those. So she was able to talk a little bit about his opinions on certain issues, in the interview, because she read his articles. And did that really take her that much time? Not really. I mean, all this stuff is just, you follow one link to another link that leads you, to the gold nuggets. But that guy with the resume, oh my goodness, that
I will say, as far as being on, like you said, a couple years ago, I was leaving one organization, going to another organization, and it wasn't an ideal transition. But I kept, I didn't burn any bridges. I still remained friendly and pleasant with everybody, from an older company. And turns out at my new company, one of like the sisters of an old colleague was like a vice president.
Wow.
And and she was not my direct department, but I do work in the same group as her. And it was one of those things that, we have a great relationship, and I kept a great relationship with her sister at my old company. And, so it's just nice to always kind of remember that, depending on where you are, every city is a small city. When I was in DC, it's still a small city. There's still connections everywhere. So.
Right. Well, because you're in a certain skill set, or maybe you're in a certain industry, or, you just you never know who knows who. So that's why you really, when you're in job search mode, you should never, even when you're not in job search mode, but you should never be talking badly about people that you worked for in the past, because there is a perception that if you didn't like those people, why would you like us now? Because if I tell you I had a terrible boss, I hated him, he was mean to me, this is what he did. Well, you just met me today, so you don't know if I'm telling the truth. Like, you don't know that person's side of the story. Maybe I'm the problem, and you don't know that. So there's no win in complaining about anything ever. Really, there's no win in it. So that's a really good point. But so one of the things that, I wanted to talk with you about today, especially Susan, is that, as a former recruiter, I don't know if you get this, but when I go to parties or I go places and I meet people, and I used to tell them I was a recruiter, even now, as a career coach, people have a lot of opinions about working with recruiters, particularly agency recruiters, who are representing multiple client companies and roles, but even corporate recruiters as well. And I did both of those things in my career. But they have opinions about working with recruiters, and sometimes they are frustrated with working with recruiters, and they say, this recruiter didn't do this for me, or this recruiter didn't follow up with me, or they're just kind of down on us, as people, even though we very much are the gatekeepers of the portal in a lot of cases, and a vast majority of cases, except maybe for some very small organizations that don't have, recruiting staff. We are the gatekeepers to help them get to the next step. So is there anything that stands out for you that is helpful for job seekers when working with recruiters to develop better relationships with recruiters, so that the recruiters are their advocate and not their adversary, and that it's not this, I need to get past you, you're in my way, as opposed to how can we collaborate better with recruiters?
So I definitely understand that. And I understand, I've not been an agency recruiter, but I've been a corporate recruiter for about 10 years in that space. And in both of the scenarios where I've been a full life cycle recruiter, we've had a very high load of jobs to fill. And so, the thing that if I could change one thing, it would be, I wish I could get back to candidates and get them answers within 24 hours on their resume, on their interview, on all that stuff. Unfortunately, the business sometimes doesn't work that fast. And so, from a recruiter's perspective, I want to give you the information as fast as possible, because if you're not a fit, I don't want to waste your time. I want you to find something that is a fit for you, or either at my company or at another company. I always think it's helpful just to say, what does this timeline look like? Because I'll be very honest. There's sometimes, if I'm posting a job in December, I'm very open about, this timeline looks like 2020, because we're not going to get through interviews before the holiday break and all this stuff. So I definitely think asking for that timeline is helpful. And then, obviously if there's a delay, it's not awesome on either side when there's a delay of information and communication. But if if a recruiter is genuinely apologetic and saying, hey, I don't have an answer yet, I apologize, I always try and say, feel free to reach out to me if you want an update. I will try and keep you as updated as possible with the information that I'm getting, because unfortunately I can't control the manager making those decisions, and no matter how hard I pressure them. So I think as long as there's some understanding on both sides, and just some honesty. Like, I've known candidates obviously get very upset when they haven't heard fast enough, and I'm very honest in saying, hey, unfortunately we can't do this. If you have competing offers, let me know, and maybe I can use that to pressure the hiring manager to make some decisions. And then I also I always encourage people, either if it's a candidate or just someone I've met at a job fair or a cocktail party or something, connect with me on LinkedIn. Is the best way for anything. And I think this kind of flows into potentially another question, but I always encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. And that way, if you see a job, hey, Susan, are you the recruiter for this job? You know what? I'm not the recruiter, but let me send me your resume. I'll see if it matches the qualifications. And then, if you apply, I can flag your name to the appropriate recruiter. All that stuff I think is really, really helpful. I try and be a resource for people because, we want people to have a good candidate experience, and we want people to, even if they don't get the job, feel like I was heard, I was treated fairly, I was treated with respect, and maybe come back to us when maybe there's another role that might be a better fit for them. So I definitely always encourage, to, if you have the name of the recruiter, reach out via LinkedIn. If they connect with you, great. Also, again, moving to potentially flowing into another question is, I know and it would help for a corporate recruiter, but for an agency recruiter, if they're recruiting for a bunch of different things and you have a referral candidate and you throw them a referral candidate that might be a good fit, that's a really good way to stay on the radar. It's a really good way to be, I don't want to say, be valuable, because everyone's valuable, but it's a really good way to show them that you're nurturing that relationship as well.
Right.
So I always think that's really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that people don't realize that, you can develop a relationship with recruiters, and yes, they're the gatekeepers, but if you do reach out to them, because I remembered, I think people think that it's annoying a recruiter, to reach out to them, but if you're not being a jerk, and you're being nice, and you're being respectful, and you're being reasonable, right, with the whole give and take of the process, I think, that they are the people that come top of mind. Like, I remember there were candidates that would reach out to me periodically and offer a referral or offer something to nurture the relationship. You remember those people, and especially agency recruiters, if you remember the people that reached out to you and in a professional way, and you want to help those people more. I always did. I always felt like I did want to help those people more, because I could see that they really were very serious job seekers. And if unless I thought there was no role in the world, that would fit this person, but if there was a role that I thought, we might eventually have that would fit this person, you want to keep those people. Like, recruiters want to have relationships with candidates. If that they don't, to your point of, the hiring manager situation, the recruiter doesn't have total control over that relationship when it comes to the interview process and it comes to the selection process. But that recruiter does have, and some organizations more than others, but the last organization I worked for, the recruiters actually were pretty well respected partners, and talent acquisition was a respected partner, and the recruiters really did have a lot of influence over, some of the decisions that were made. So, just like you want to be nice to the security person or the person at the front desk, you want to nurture those relationships with the recruiter. And even if you don't get the job, realize that that person is still a source of, connection for you. And also, do recruiters stay with the same company for the rest of their lives either? No, so, you might have a recruiter that, there are so many recruiters that I worked with in my corporate and agency days when I connect with them on LinkedIn now. and see like how they all work for so many different companies. So like all of these people, you know, they move around, and even if, you know, you might work for a company today that isn't someplace I want to work for whatever reason. And then you may, you know, a few years from now be working somewhere else. And if I keep in touch with you, oh, Susan works for this company now. And oh, I really am interested in that company. But if I was a jerk to you because I didn't like, you know, your current opportunity, then I'm just on the jerk list. So, I mean, that doesn't help. So, yeah, so that's really
and I will also say, I post some my jobs, even some of them hard to fill, some of them not hard to fill, on LinkedIn. And as a recruiter, my network is a lot of recruiters, and then those recruiters will maybe not share it on their profile sometimes, and they might, but then they'll ping someone in their network, and then or someone else who pings someone else, and the word gets out. And so that way, if you do have that relationship, I might share an opening from an old colleague who's a recruiter at a different company, and then you see, hey, that's a good fit for me. Hey, Susan, could you introduce me to this person? Because their opening, I think, aligns with my goals. And so it really is, network, obviously network, but it really using that social network to get what you want.
Right. And that's why, though, I use the word, and it's funny how you just said network, because it's like, I think I don't like the word networking. I feel like it's an old-fashioned word, and I still use it too, but even though I catch myself because I don't really want to use it anymore, but I use the word connection, because really connection to me feels more genuine, and I think if you can make some genuine connections, where you really get to know somebody a little bit and you're really like paying attention to them, following them, even on LinkedIn, commenting on their stuff when they post something, or, just anything like that keeps you top of mind. And, I think even when you're not in job search mode, even, just as far as a career management practice, I get so many people, and I'm sure you do too as a recruiter, but even as a coach, especially, so many people freaking out because they're looking for a job for the first time in however many years, and their resume is not updated, and they don't have a network. They haven't connected with people. I mean, I know people who've gotten laid off, after 10, 15, 20 plus years at the same company, and they have not, the thought of looking for a job has not even entered their mind. And now that they're forced to do so, it's very stressful and overwhelming because they're not prepared, and they have not kept up any of those types of connections where they could say, oh, well, this is bad that I have to find a job right now, but I talk to all these people on LinkedIn and they all know me, and so I can go to them first and see if I can get help with finding a new role. So I mean, I think that's a really important thing. So one of the things that I got, as I said earlier, from stalking your Facebook profile was that picture of you with your girls. And, obviously that did resonate with me. I have a stepdaughter. I didn't raise a little girl. I have a stepdaughter that was 13 when I came into her life. And I have a son who's a grown man now who's very successful. And I certainly don't want him to not have opportunities, because I want women to have all the opportunities, but I certainly want women to have opportunities. And, working with women primarily as my coaching clients, I just really feel like, even on my Yeti cup, I have this thing that says empowered women empower women. So, I really think it's very important for, and I see a lot of power in women coming together. So I know that was something that is near and dear to you, Susan, just by that photo. And then from your bio as well, you echoed that sentiment. So a lot of professional women feel very frustrated working in male-dominated industries and spaces. And I've actually gotten, it's interesting, because that wasn't really my intention in working only with women, was to focus on that piece of it. Although I think I need to learn more even myself about that piece of it and what those struggles are as I work on some other programs that I'm developing, and like long-term mentorship type career management programs I'm developing for women later in the year. So I was wondering, from your perspective, because I think it would be valuable for my audience, if you have any thoughts, and I don't know what industry that you're working in right now, and if it is a male-dominated industry or not. You mentioned a couple of males being applicants, but that doesn't mean anything. So any thoughts or advice on, just women navigating either the interview process, which can also be male-dominated, in some companies, or just navigating this male-dominated culture, and how how you see that vision of your daughters having more opportunities and you and I having more opportunities, how you see that kind of coming together in the workplace.
Yeah. So I was recently on a panel for a young professionals board for a nonprofit locally that I used to serve on. And talking with them, it was interesting because they're like, it was kind of like a similar question. And I was like, my biggest thing was be the person that you wish your 22-year-old self had in the workplace, right? Like be that colleague, be dependent, no matter how old you are. But like for me, kind of like as a mid career, I see these young women coming up and I'm like, okay, I want to be a safe space for them. They need to feel safe to fail with me. They need to feel safe to have a dumb idea, because there's no dumb ideas, or no dumb questions, but like they need to feel safe to really do those things, because those are the things that traditionally males do without getting penalized. They can have an idea and then it'll fail and they'll fail forward. Whereas women, then if my idea fails, I like withdraw and I get nervous that I'm not good enough and I have imposter syndrome or something. So first of all, be the colleague that you wish you had when you were younger. And then second of all, one of the things I love is the concept of the shine theory, where I succeed if you succeed. And if you succeed, I succeed. And it's, the rising tide raises all ships. So one of the things I'm very conscious of is, if we're in a meeting, because a lot of the studies show that a woman comes in with an idea and a man can say the exact same thing and he'll get the credit for the idea if he says it after her. And so one of the things, if the shine theory would be, hey, Joan, great idea. Joan's great idea was this. And so echoing what your female colleague said, so that it almost cements it that this was her idea. I think stuff like that's really important because it uplifts everybody. I think calling out, and I have worked when I was in DC, especially in the political space, was very, very male dominated. And, calling out women's successes and helping them when they fail during their failures. Like I was saying, talking about the panel that I was on recently, I have been laid off twice in my life. Once when I was young and single, no mortgage and no kids. But that one was harder because I did not have any women around me. I didn't have a great network. And I didn't have people around me saying, you got this. You'll be okay. You are amazing and talented and you'll be okay. So that one was harder. And then the second time it happened, I had a mortgage and 2 children. And so with that one, I had a great network, a strong network of people who were sending me job links, of people who were referring me to places, of people who were, writing recommendations for me, or, going on LinkedIn and endorsing me for recruiting or whatever that was. Right. And I had those women holding me up during that. And it was, I had no downtime after that. The last layoff, I had no downtime and was able to find a job immediately that was more responsibility and paid better. And I credit that with the little whispers in my ear saying, you got this, you got this. And you need that, not just in times of a layoff or a crisis, but you need that every single day. The colleagues who, are gonna, you got this, it's okay. Wow, that was amazing. I'm not proud of you. That sounds a little talking down, but that was amazing. Yeah. What a great idea. And I think that's really important, to be that person for someone else and create that culture in your place of work. We cannot, I can't turn around the Titanic. Really, it takes a long time to change some of the cultural norms if you are in a male-dominated field. Being in HR, I'm surrounded by a lot of women, but in a larger industry, it's very male-dominated. And the best you can do is your best in the little moments of, appropriately calling out or flagging inappropriate behavior. But then also, I think creating the culture where women support women, and I support my male colleagues too, and I praise them and call out their successes as well. But I do think, women supporting women really creates that culture that it's not adversarial, which I know in some male-dominated cultures can be the norm, where it's like, well, they're only going to promote one woman, And
Right.
so we are against each other and we are battling for that.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And that's probably the biggest challenge. But if you're creating the culture of like safety with your female colleagues, I think that's really the way to start turning the Titanic around.
Yeah, I love that analogy. But yeah, I'm older than you, and I remember, more years ago than when you were working, that, women were more adversarial against each other in the workplace. And I really see that that is changing and that tide is turning and that people are trying to pull that Titanic out because I see a lot more cooperation amongst women with each other, in all facets of life. I just think that is just, and I see it more in the younger generation, them really pushing for that. Like, even when in social media, even like just in, all the anti-bullying stuff and, the anti-body shaming and all the things that exist now, I think that we're bringing out into the open, that women do to each other, never mind what we think men do, it's just what women do to each other, but don't do for each other. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting take on it. Instead of, I work in a male-dominated culture and I have this adversarial thing now with these men and I have to be tougher with them or rise above it or whatever. I like the idea of, the collaboration, like the way to elevate yourself is to elevate other women as well. And then that helps to elevate you, because I think when you focus on, I really like that because I think when you focus on helping other women in order to help yourself, like that's huge. It's not, because I think most women have that a little bit of a nurturing quality anyway, and they like to help people. So I think that, when you, like, if I help you to be more successful, that makes me feel good. And now me feeling good makes me be more successful like this. And then you help me, and it does, it makes, it rises it for everyone. And, we rise together then. So I really like that concept as opposed to, I think, sometimes women look at themselves in a victim mentality when they're in that situation. And obviously, sometimes you can be a victim of discrimination, illegal discrimination, sexual discrimination, sexual harassment. There's obviously all sorts of ways we can actually truly be a victim as the law defines it, right? But I think that just being a victim of it's hard to go to work every day and deal with these men, that's something that you have to figure out how to fix, and the best you can, because it's not, we can't really make it illegal for them to be jerks, or them to be unsupportive. Or,
Yeah.
It's not really illegal. It's not good. It's not good for their careers either. As you said, we want men to also participate and support, ideally all colleagues should support all colleagues. But we don't live in a perfect world. And like you said, it takes time to affect change, and especially in some industries, and especially with, I find men my age or older, again, we're brought up in a culture where, like, a lot of this stuff is just not resonating with them from when they were younger. They're like, why is the workplace like this now? It's different. It's, change is hard for everybody, even those who aren't, who don't have ill intentions. Maybe they just don't know. They need to be educated better, about what to do. So yeah, I really like that. And I think that, yeah, if we all do that for each other, not only will it help us, but it will help the next generation of those little girls with the feminist t-shirts on that are so cute now.
Yeah. My thing with my girls is that they're a team. We are, as a family, we are a team, but out in the world as sisters, they are a team. And so they're young, so it's working for now. I hope it stays working sure. through the teen years. But I see that in the workplace too. We're a team. If one of us goes down, we all go down.
Right, it's true, because if you have, right, that's how you really do have to look at it ultimately, is, what's the common goal here, right? Like, supporting each other is helping each other, is helping yourself, right? Well, thank you so much, Susan, for taking the time during your work day to talk to me and my audience. I really appreciate it so much. And now we've made another connection, see? So we can refer to each other because we've made a connection. So the more
find me on LinkedIn.
the bigger the world gets. The bigger your world gets when you make more connections. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend and rest of the day. I look forward to sharing your information with my people, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.